Hello, Bob.
Hey, Ronnie.
How you?
Well, I have been better, but it costs more.
I can understand.
Right.
You looked better then, too.
Well, I couldn't look any worse, you know.
Well, yeah, I guess that's about right. You looked pretty bad that time you burnt your foot. You looked kind of bad that time you drunk that rotten motor juice, too.
Yeah, I've had periods of looking bad.
Yeah, you've had your bad days. Ain't no question about
I
that.
sure have. I was talking to a fellow yesterday. He said, well, don't worry about it. He said, you already lived 3 lives.
That's good for them to say. 39's a good birthday if you can celebrate it often enough.
Well, I've celebrated 39, somewhere around about 50, almost 50, or about 45 years, I've celebrated being 39.
Yeah, well, you and Jack Benny, he didn't hold up good as you have.
No, for old Jack, I was just thinking, I've been able to see all the great comedians, I think, that ever come on the radio or television, I got to see them all. Jack Benny was one of the best that I got to see.
What about Rochester?
Rochester, yeah, I remember Rochester, he was always Jack Benny's straight man.
Yeah. Oh.
But I like Jack Benny, They had this skit, and the guy pointed the gun at Jack Benny's head and says, all right, says, your money or your life? He says, well, let me think about it.
Yeah. He had that old, what was his car? It was, you never did see it, it was on the radio, you could hear it. It was an old Duesenberg or something, I don't know, it was something. He's driving it, they hadn't made, what it was, they hadn't made him 50 years, and he's still driving or his chauffeur was.
Well, that reminds me.
Oh.
We had a candidate for governor in North Carolina that lived in our community. I'll think of his name just a minute. But he drove an old 39 Packard. Now this was when I was there in the 50s and 60s. He was still driving that 39 Packard, and he had turned it over, and it had a concave place it was a coupe.
Yeah.
Had a concave place there that held water.
Yeah.
And he would pull up to the store if he stopped real quick. That water would go out over across his windshield, and he'd have to turn his windshield wipers on.
Yeah, I know. I had my daddy's uncle would have been my great uncle, I guess. He had his own little slum down Lake City, and he had an old truck that had the top caved in on it. It was, it had a swimming pool on top, but it kept it good and cool in the summertime if you was sitting still.
Yeah, I remember that old Packard real well. And I remember a lot of old automobiles as well as all old comedians, I got a CD of, what's his name, You Bet Your Life, Groucho Marx.
Yeah.
Now, he was one of my favorite comedians. He was the best in the world at coming up with things that were not scripted.
Now, he was goofy, too. Some of it was right silly, but he was funny, too.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought, and I'm sure he's a pretty good guy. I liked his telethons, but I didn't care much for Jerry Lewis's humor. I always thought he was silly myself.
I thought Jerry was silly, too, but I liked Groucho Marx. And Groucho married a woman that had some young kids. And he went to the PTA meeting one night, and they brought up something, and Groucho just got things so stirred up they almost had a riot there at the PTA meeting. He just went into everything, and people got so upset they were about to throw everybody at the PTA out.
They said something about he wouldn't let him in a country club because he was a Jew. He said he wouldn't join a club but let him in anyway.
Yeah, he was quite a character. Like I say, I got to hear and listen to all of them. Danny Thomas, he was always the one that talking about what he should have done, or should have done this, should have done that.
Danny Thomas is the one made Andy Griffith famous.
Right.
I mean, all he'd done up to then was a few plays, and he was in a movie. He was in The Face in the Crowd. That was pretty well accepted, but he's mostly known for that football game he went to.
Yeah, well, that's true,
But he got on there, and he was the sheriff of Mayberry, and he arrested Danny Thomas and for speeding. Gonna put him in jail. And Danny didn't want to pay the fine. He wanted to see the judge, and Andy changed hats, and he was the judge. He was all of them, and Danny Thomas was having a fit. He didn't have no money. He couldn't get out of jail, and he was there all weekend. By the time the weekend was over, he kind of liked old Andy, and then it was so well received. They started Andy got his own show. And it was so good that Gomer got his show out of it, too.
Yeah, Gomer got his, and then old Lindsay also got a show there for a while. He's the one
I thought he did, but I don't remember it. It must not went over much big.
Right, and, Barney appeared in Three's Company. He went on to be the landlord there.
He made some movies, too. Wasn't he in... wasn't he Walter Mitty one time? If he wasn't Walter Mitty, he was a ripoff of Walter's character.
Well, he was in the Apple Dumpling Gang. That was one of the movies he made.
And the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
Right, yeah. Quite a character. It just makes me feel so good that I knew Andy Griffin personally. He came back to the University of North Carolina as a graduate student the year I entered as a freshman. And so the whole 4 years I was there, I had somewhat of a relationship with Andy Griffin in that he would come over to the restaurant that I worked at and tip me $5. Now, they would come in about 1:45 when we got ready to close, because they knew I stayed in there, and they would sit there and eat spaghetti.
2 a.m. or 2 p.m.?
Huh?
2 in the morning or 2 in the night?
2 in the afternoon. The restaurant opened from 11 a.m. and closed at 2 p.m. And I stayed in there from 2 to 5 because I went back to work at 5. So I just stayed in there. I got the manager to let me stay in there. And because in the wintertime it was warm in there, I didn't have to walk over a half a mile back to my apartment, and I could stay in there and study. And when Andy and them found out I stayed in there, they made a point of coming in about 5 or 10 minutes till 2, and they'd sit in there and drink beer, eat spaghetti or pizza or whatever they ordered. And when they left, they'd tip me $5. And the manager knew I was going to collect every nickel that he was entitled to, which I've always been known to do that, And I didn't let him off the hook on nothing, tip me $5 because I gave him good service. And so I knew Andy Griffin. I also knew, I can't think of his name right now, but he was the Mr. Roper on the
Three's Company.
Yeah, the Three's Company. He was Mr. Roper. I'll think of his name just a minute. And the way I knew him, he was in Japan doing some shows. Then he flew into Greensboro International Airport, and he was going to appear at one of the places there that served a meal, and you eat your meal and watch the play at the same time, you know.
Yeah,
And,
dinner theater.
Yeah, dinner theater. And the way I got to know him was that he called his girlfriend up to come and get him at the airport. And I had done throwed him out of the sack. So she and I had to go to, I took her, we went and picked him up at the airport and carried him to the dinner theater. And we had free dinner and free meal and got to watch the show and everything. But that's what happened, Mr. Roper. I had throwed him out of the sack with Elka was her name.
Well, how'd that work out?
Huh?
Norman Fell?
Yeah, Norman. Yeah, it was Norman. That's who it was.
I said, how'd that work out? Did he ever get his woman back, or did he give up on her?
No. He was just when he was around in the neighborhood, she was his girlfriend. So, and she's a very pretty girl, and as the name implies, she was German, and so that's where I met Aaron Felt. And then I had the opportunity, old Carmichael Hall, which is one that came along before the Dean Center down at the University of North Carolina. I used to go up and sit in the teachers section of Carmichael Hall and watch the basketball games. And this was a little bit before the era of Michael Jordan, but we had some good teams along then. And on the faculty at the University of North Carolina was an old North Carolina girl from down about Four Oaks, North Carolina, raised in a tobacco field, a very beautiful woman by the name of Ava Gardner. And Ava sat right behind me, or I sat right in front of her, whichever way it was. And Ava and I had a lot to talk about because we both had picked worms off of tobacco stalks. We both suckered tobacco. We both had primed it and put it in the barn, fired it, and done everything else. So we had a lot in common that we talked about. And she used to write little notes.
You never was married to Mickey Rooney, was you?
Yeah, she Mickey Rooney.
No, you.
Also,
was you married to Mickey?
No, I wasn't.
No,
but she also was married to Frank Sinatra. And in fact, Frank's one, I think, paid for the casket at the funeral. Okay, but she was teaching there in between some shows, and she was a very delightful person, very pretty to be her age. She was in her 60s, and she's a very pretty lady. And we really had some good times there. She'd write little notes to my daughter, my oldest daughter, on the Carolina program, and I'd take them home to my little girl. And but I don't have those. My ex-wife took those with me when we separated, and she wound up destroying them.
Why? Why?
Okay, and I've known a lot of famous people in my day and time. Kay Kaiser, I don't know whether you ever remember Kay Kaiser and his musical College of Knowledge that he had on radio.
No, that's before my time.
He was a well-known band director during the era of big bands, and Kay Kaiser retired down to Chapel Hill, and he used to love to eat at the restaurant I worked at, and he always requested to be seated where a student waiter was waiting the tables. So we had some full-time waiters and we had some student waiters. And
you mean going to school or just learning how to wait on people?
No, going to school. And so he always requested that he sit on a student table. And most of the time I was the only one student working at night. You know, some of the others had worked during the day, but sometimes there was two, but mostly I was the only student waiter that waited at night. And Kay Kaiser would tip me $5 also. I had an instant occurrence to him. The restaurant I worked at was called a porthole, and the entire inside of it was built like the interior of built like a ship, and it had a bulkhead that come around, and it had a big about 6-place table back in there that you could sit in there under the bulkhead, and that's where Kay Kaiser liked to sit because he usually brought a whole crowd with him. He bought everybody's dinner, you know. He was a multi-millionaire. And so one evening I carried my tray up like this, up on my hand, and that's the way I'd weave around through there, you know. And I came under that bulkhead, and I had it too high, and we had a cream pitcher, one of these that come up like this and had the handle on that you open it. It knocked that cream pitcher off, and it landed right in Kay Kaiser's coffee cup. Fit it perfect, did not splash any coffee out or anything. It just landed perfect and fit it right in that coffee cup. And I was really embarrassed, and I apologized to him and everything. He said, "Don't worry about it." He was very down to earth, you know. Said things like that happen. So I knew Kay Kaiser, you know, and I know I've known some other people that were famous, you know.
Well, there ain't nobody more famous than you and me, Bob.
I know that Dale Earnhardt, as a young man, used to come to my farm and race motorcycles, and I knew Dale real well when he was young. I didn't know him after he made all that money, but
It's funny how they don't know you anymore when they get well off.
That's true. I knew his dad also, Ralph. I knew Ralph Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt real well, and of course I knew Richard Petty real well. I almost could say I grew up with Richard, because he lived across the woods over there in Brandon from where I lived, and we all used to somehow manage to congregate together, you know, on Friday and Saturday night. And so I've known Richard Petty, and of course I met a lot of the NASCAR drivers, and of course it's interesting to note that Michael Jordan just bought a NASCAR racing outfit. He's going to race in NASCAR, and he hired the one that Bubba Wallace drives for. Bubba's the black guy that they found the news.
You had the door closed and wrote for news, didn't he?
Yeah, they did. So, yeah, I've known a lot of you, and I guess probably my favorite person of note that I've met over the years was Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown. I don't know if you know who she was.
No, you got me. What kind of a doctor was she?
Well, she was, I guess she's a doctor of literature or something like that.
She ain't the one wrote about the tree growing. No, what was that one you were talking about? Tree growing in Brooklyn? Is that it?
No, I knew her. Yeah, I forgot about Susan Smith. I forgot I met Susan Smith. You know, didn't know who she was.
She was a Smith?
Yeah.
I thought she was Jewish. Smith don't sound very Jewish.
That was the name she used.
Okay. Well, she still may have been Jewish.
Yeah, okay. Well, Smith boys bad to get around, you know.
Well, yeah, but you know, a lot of people change their names when they start writing books and stuff.
That's very true.
I don't like for people to know I'm really David McCullough, you know. I don't like that to get out just everywhere.
Well, Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown, about 3 miles south of McLeansville, North Carolina, which was the home of Andrew Jackson's first law office.
Boy, it's getting complicated here now.
About 3 miles down the road. I didn't know Andrew Jackson.
You knew his daddy, though, didn't you? You knew his daddy, didn't you?
Yeah, his daddy real well. But about 3 miles down the road was a little community called Sedalia, North Carolina.
Yeah, I remember that's where Rowdy Yates
No, that's in
different Sedalia. Okay.
That's in Kansas or somewhere. But there was a town called Sedalia, and it had a post office called Sedalia.
Makes sense. We're going to name it Hickory Creek or something.
Yeah, and there was a girls' finishing school there for black girls at Sedalia, North Carolina, called the Palmer Memorial Institute. And they had all these rich kids from New York City to come down and
Get finished.
yeah, go to the finishing school. And Dr. Brown was the head of the school. She may have started it, I don't really know. But during the Second World War, when gas and tires and everything was rationed, my daddy worked for the Railway Express in Greensboro, North Carolina, and everything that was shipped to the Palmer Memorial Institute or to the girls that lived there came through the Railway Express office that he ran. He ran the what they call the own hand department. That's where you can come pick up your packages. Well, due to the lack of gas and tires and everything else, he would bring whatever was shipped to the Palmer Memorial Institute home with him, and Dr. Brown would come over there probably about an hour before Daddy got home from work, and she'd sit there and drink coffee with my mother. We always kept a big old pot of coffee on, and I would sit there and she would tell me all these wondrous stories about New York City and everywhere she had been, because she had no television, and this was first-hand information that she told me all these things. And she was one of my favorite persons. She also was related to Chicken George that was mentioned in the story Roots. And
So she's a black lady then.
she was a black lady, yeah. And I sat on her lap for many a time. I was 7, 8 years old, 6, 7 years old. I was to get just as close to her as I could so I could hear all them stories she had to tell me about those strange places that I never thought I would ever visit, And I didn't know then that I would have the opportunity to visit La Follette, Tennessee.
Boy, that's you've moved up in the world.
Right, I have. I've gained.
How you gonna keep the boy back on the farm?
It's hard to keep him down on the farm
Yeah.
after he's seen La Follette.
Yeah, he won't leave. What do you want to do? Can't keep our politicians out of jail around here.
I tell you, we're getting a run on them, Marvin.
Yeah, buddy. It's kind of like Chicago. They don't retire, they go to jail.
Go to jail, and then you come back out and
run again.
Run again. Yeah. I just looking at it, there's probably not but one or two running in the county that hadn't been in jail.
Well, you can't get near as many votes, so you go in and make some friends.
That's very, very true. But that's a pretty good run of the people that I've had the pleasure of meeting, and I'm sorry I left Susan Smith out, the tree grows in Brooklyn. You're very fine, very older lady, I don't think she moved from there about a year or so after I met her. She went somewhere back home, maybe New York, and maybe Brooklyn.
No, you never know.
All right. Well, that's about everybody I know. Other than I know you.
Well, any news, anything in the current situation you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know. You got a little Jewish lady that died, Ginsburg, on the Supreme Court, and that has opened up an opportunity for Donald Trump to appoint his third Supreme Court justice, and that's going to have a tremendous effect down the road as to how the policies and the direction that this country's going to take is going to work out, because so many of times they will end up in the Supreme Court.
Well, they're having conniptions over it, ain't they?
Well, yeah, but you know, they can't say a whole lot. Chuck Schumer has been a part of confirming 17 justices in an election year over his period of time in the Senate.
He done what?
He had the opportunity to appear at 17 times to appoint a Supreme Court justice.
Schumer?
Schumer.
Okay. Well, you know, they don't need to stay that long.
You talking about the senators?
Yeah.
Well, I know. I think I'm very much in favor of term limits on senators and also on especially on representatives. Because
Representatives worse than senators.
Yeah, say that right. You know, they're elected, what, for 2-year periods?
They get elected for 2 years, but they never leave.
Might as well, you know, when they save a lot of money when they elect one, just appoint him for a lifetime, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, they used to appoint senators. That'd be a good thing. We could unappoint a few every now and then.
Right. Yeah, you could unappoint a senator, but the House of Representatives, you know, they're the ones that hold the power of the purse.
Well, they're the ones that are supposed to represent, supposed to take care of the government, be the people's representative to the federal government, and senators are supposed to represent the states in federal government. But that's been perverted.
Yeah, they've tried. Well, you take, you elect your representatives, and they hold the power of the purse. Some of them said that the Republicans were holding up the second stimulus. Well, I don't care whether they do or not. You know, that's something. It's hard to appropriate money that you hadn't got. You know, but that's neither here nor there. But the representatives hold the power of the purse, and if there's any new money involved, then the House of Representatives has to approve it. Now, Trump did so many things by using what we call old money. That was money that had already been appropriated, and he just transferred it from one agency to the other. And that was not new money, but any new money has to come to the House of Representatives.
Well, I'll just tell you, all this year, the most recent thing, Trump ain't going to leave. Of course, he's jerking her chain partly on that, but all the time wanting to know whether he's going to accept the results of the election. I want to know when Hillary's going to accept the results of the last election.
She's still hanging in there.
Oh, them people, if you remember, they wanted to change. They wanted to had a big blowout trying to get the Electoral College to violate their oaths and not vote for him. They never did accept the results of the election. Still ain't.
Well, yeah, just disappointment of a Supreme Court justice.
You know, I've been hearing about all these conspiracy theories about the Kennedy assassination since 1963, and I mean, I bet there's 100 books. This deal on that subject, and a few thousand that reference it in a few chapters about all these mysterious happenings and unrelated stuff that was actually related, and all these conspiracy theories involved with that. We just been going through an attempted legal coup to get rid of an elected president. That's all that all this year impeachment stuff has been about.
Right.
And
Then they were
there's a whole lot more evidence for a conspiracy to do that than there is for
assassinate Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I don't know who was on the grassy knoll for Trump.
Also had a conspiracy involving the 25th Amendment
Yeah.
Which if they could get so many of the cabinet members to sign off on instability portion, then they could remove the president of the United States.
You know, I don't know. There was a big stink about the Russians revealing Hillary's emails. And that was awful. That was awful. Awful that we actually find out what was going on. I don't know where the press is at. They ought to been wanting to read them and reveal them instead of get all upset because they were out there. I thought that was their job to let us know all these things that are happening that we don't know about. And then this year's thing about the Ukraine.
Oh,
That's another deal. Well, I didn't see anything wrong with it. If he'd have done what they said he done, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Well, they're just mad because he was trying to force some information. He didn't ask them to lie. Just get us. I mean, even if he done what they charged,
just tell us.
he just said, "Let us know what happened." He didn't say make up something.
Right.
We want to know about old Joe.
Tell the truth. You know, I'm anxious to see what the Durham report.
I don't know where that's ever going to come out or not.
I don't know whether they're going to break it before the election or not, you know, but it's supposed to be. And I think that will be very damning to Joe
Well, if
Biden.
Trump gets elected, he'll amount to something, and if he don't get elected, it'll be, oh, that's just old news and forget about it.
Yeah, that's very true. But I saw today that the Senate had come out with a position that Hunter Biden was more involved in the Ukraine than had previously been made known.
Yeah, he got somewhat over $2 million from a Russian babe over there to influence something,
Right,
supposedly.
right.
And
His biggest deal, though, they haven't even mentioned, was with China.
yeah, I know.
Where they wound up with about $5 billion in a different manner, you know, for his concessions and jobs and that sort of
I
thing.
read that Durham was including in his investigation the Clinton.
Foundation,
Yeah,
right? Well, you know, their money kind of dried up when she
yeah, she got beat and they had to go out of business.
kind of dried up when she lost the election, and but they had a good thing going there for a while. You know, it was you had to play to pay, had to pay to play. I mean,
I reckon they had that thing cooked up pretty good. They just had a pipeline to the banks, what they had, and then funny thing happened on the way to the office.
right, a strange thing happened.
Yeah, you never know.
Well, you know, it's amazing to me that our government has done as many good things as it has done with all this corruption that's involved with it. I think this was unintended benefits that we got.
I didn't realize how in bed with each other everybody is up there. I knew it was a corrupt town, but these people are fighting tooth and nail to keep the playhouse from collapsing.
Yeah, that's true. See, Trump don't play ball with them, you know. He may
No,
not,
and they got all them blame. They got the news media is part of the Klan.
That's part of the problem, yeah. They sure are. And they support it. And like I say, it just amazes me that we've been able to do as much good. The government's been able to do as much good with all the corruption and people who are there for no other reason other than to enrich themselves.
Well, it's always been crooked, but it's got so embedded in the whole social and management structure now that, I mean, this is a threat to them people. This is just like the end of the world for the playhouse.
Right. Yeah,
And I ain't saying it's Republicans and Democrats. They just old
Both
boys have just been trading out.
right.
Whoever was got to turn the lights on at the White House, they ain't been a change in the direction any.
Right, no, it's been, both of them have been very, very corrupt over the years, and we point to some.
I don't know why we ain't got more around here went to the show,
Well,
We got a farm team around here that ought to have all the qualifications to go to the big time.
I don't say why in the world, Lord. This is like the farm league of the baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball.
Yeah, we got our own farm team
Got our
here.
own farm team. We are training all these people down here to be corrupt enough to go to Washington D.C. You ever spend any time in Washington D.C.?
I've been around there a time or two. It must be that we just ain't corrupt enough to get there.
Well, Washington used to be a fun town when I was a young man. It really was, and I know all them bad places.
I was up there.
in Washington D.C.
I was up there outside the Capitol one day, and this box truck pulled up, and they went to unloading whiskey and all sorts of liquor. They must have had $5,000 worth of stuff they was unloading off the truck, and I just assumed it was a day's shipment. They was hauling it in on dollies, getting ready for school to let out.
Yeah. I always enjoyed going to Washington. Some of the roughest places in Washington was down close to Georgetown University, down on L and K Street. That was some of the roughest places of Washington D.C. And we used to say that was our place. We carved our niche down
It's
there.
hard. The last time I was there, I couldn't get nowhere. I couldn't find nowhere. I finally just went and took a tour and went around and looked at stuff.
Right.
Berlin Lamb down here, he used to drive a truck for A.J. Mettler.
Right.
And, of course, he told this tale, but he said he went up there and he got on the loop and he had to deliver something over here. And he said he could see the place, but he couldn't find out where to get off. And he went around the loop, come back by, and he's looking, and he still can't find the road. And he passed it up. And it come the third time, and he didn't have no luck. And finally, he's going around, and he saw this cop sitting there, and he pulled over and asked him. He said, I need to go to so-and-so, and I can't figure out how to get there. And the guy said, well, I've not been here long. I don't know how to get there either. He said there'd been 3 of them Mettler trucks going through. Maybe you can just wait and get behind the next one.
Yeah, they told the story this time. This old man went to New York City to visit his son, and said when he got ready to leave, he says, now, Dad, says, you be careful. Say, when you go up this ramp, says you got to go across 5 lanes of traffic, get in the right-hand lane as soon as you can, because you're going to have to make a right. He says, now, if you can't make it across there, says, don't get hit. Says, just come back down around and go back up again. So Grandpa, the first time we went up there, said, here come a string of hippies in some Volkswagen vans, and they had him all blocked off, so he had to go down around, come back up again. Next time he got up there was a whole convoy of trucks coming down the road, so he couldn't find no way to get across, so he goes down, comes back up again. The next time he comes, here comes an ambulance and a bunch of cops' cars and sirens, so he comes down, goes around again. He was so exasperated and give out, he pulled over there in the median. Says while he was there, says somebody jacked up his car, put 4 tires on it, threw some gasoline in it, and says, get back out there, Grandpa, you running in second place.
Hello.
But I know exactly what they were talking about, because I saw one come out through there one day. He got hit this way. He went over there, got hit another way. Everybody just kept going. He got to where he wanted to go. He got hit about 3 times going across that freeway.
Oh,
It's almost like driving down Jackford Pike in
Yeah.
the Pollock, you know.
I bought a car off an old man one time. He's a good old feller. He bought the car new, and it was a '72 Olds Cutlass. And he's a real careful driver, but all four corners of that car had a ding. He had hit something with all four. He hadn't hit it hard, but there was a dent in all four corners of that car.
Oh, Lord, talking about getting lost, got lost down in Washington one time. And we were driving on, all there was overhead roads. We couldn't figure out how to get out there. And finally this policeman, he flagged us over and says, I've seen you boys riding around here. Says, I know you're trying to find your way out of here, and you need to get out of here. So this is not exactly a good place to be. And he said, I'll just lead you out. And he did. He just led us out. Well, I've had some good times, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad the world survived and you're out loose in it.
Yeah, I've had some good times. But, you know, one thing that concerns me on these so-called people that are protesting,
Yeah.
okay, they have, and this happened up in Kentucky, moved into the residential area, and he threatened to burn this guy's house down because he had an American flag.
Mm.
Now, I hope that does not continue.
It's going to get worse after the election, one way or the other.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm gonna go get me about 5 more boxes of 30-30 ammunition. They may burn it down.
Need to get some 12 gauge.
I got some 12 gauge buck. And I got 12 gauge. I got a 12 gauge shotgun. I got a 20 gauge automatic filled with buckshot. I got a 22. Probably got 5,000 rounds of ammunition, and I've got two 30-30s. Now I probably got a 3 or 4.
If you can't shoot but one at a time, you're going to have to
But
get.
what you do won't have to reload.
I was going to say, you're going to have to get you a woman to reload for you.
Yeah, I'll just grab another one, you know. But you know, it's like I forget which one of the politicians told some of the black leaders that they needed to support the police department because that's all they had to protect them, you know, which is very true. If it comes to a shooting situation in this country, the ones that's got the most guns and the most ammunition is the ones that are going to survive. And I think in the white community, I believe there is on an average of 2.5 guns per household.
Yeah.
And in the black community, there's less than 1 gun per household.
Well, I don't want to get in no shooting war.
I don't either.
All I want's room to get away, but I didn't understand when I was younger. They say a young man will fight you and an old man will kill you.
Well,
I understand that now because I'm too old and sore to fight, and I don't want to take a whooping.
Very true. I ain't gonna take no whipping.
Not
Sure
intentionally, anyway.
No.
Well, Bob, you got anything else you want to touch on? We've done a pretty good show here today as far as length. I don't know about content.
I don't know about quality.
Yeah, we got a little problem. We're going to work on that quality before we go
We have
live.
right much quantity. I don't know what we have.
I may not be here next week.
Well,
I'm going to take another little tour.
are you?
You can come do it by yourself, or we just won't have one next week.
Right. Well, we'll make that decision, you know. And
I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking I'm going to take me a little trip.
okay. That sounds good.
Got
You got your trailer built?
Yeah, my Starship. I went down to Kings Mountain. You know where Kings Mountain is?
Yeah, I do. Sure do.
I went down there.
Right down below Gaffney, South Carolina.
Well,
right on the way to Greenville.
And let me ask you something else. Do you know what liver mush is?
Liver mush, yeah.
Liver mush, yeah.
They sure do.
I went down there, and the National Forest, the park, was in South Carolina, but just 3 or 4 miles up the road was North Carolina,
Right.
and just inside North Carolina was this little restaurant, and went in there and got breakfast, and they had this something on the menu called liver mush.
Yeah.
And I said, "What's liver mush?" "Oh, it's good. You got to try it." Well, I'll try anything once,
Right.
and I'm not opposed to liver.
Right.
And it's liver and some spices and stuff and cornmeal, and they cook it, and then they cool it, and then they slice it, and then they fry it, and it was good. Had liver.
Yeah, I know.
I had liver mush and eggs for breakfast.
I mean, we used to make that at the house,
And then for supper, I had frog legs there.
Did you?
Yeah, big old frog legs.
Right.
They looked like they'd been lifting weights.
Well, weight, I doubt it, because the weight rooms have had a hard time during this recession.
Yeah, I know, but these may have been old frogs.
Right, yeah, I've eaten liver mush. In fact, we cooked it at the house. Now, I'll cook you some if you want me to.
I'm gonna try to make some. What you do? You grind it. You chop it up and then boil it, or what you do?
Well, we made it with liver pudding.
How do you make liver
You
pudding?
can buy a thing of liver pudding.
Around here?
I don't know. I've never tried to here. Yeah, I've seen it here at Save-A-Lot. Yeah, I have seen it.
Well,
Well, you can find it probably. If you can't find it here, you can find it in Knoxville. But
people I've told about it, they kind of turn their nose up this liver thing. But the one thing I hear about that I don't have a hankering to try is blood pudding. The British are big on
I know
blood
they
pudding.
do. I've never tried any. I don't know what blood pudding is.
That don't sound like something I'd enjoy.
No, I never was much on eating hog brains either.
Well, head cheese ain't bad.
Huh?
Head cheese ain't bad. That's hog brains
Yeah, I know.
and a hog's head and souse meat.
South meat.
And I reckon tripe is lungs, ain't it?
It's a belly.
In the belly.
Yeah.
Well, what do they call? We used to call them the lights.
It's called them lights.
Yeah,
That's the lungs.
yeah. But what do they call that? When you don't go buy lung meat. Does they make that into sauce or something?
I don't know.
We ought to end this show a minute ago, I think.
I know tripe, but tripe is a belly. I
Yeah.
know that.
Don't you guess maybe we ought to ended this show a little earlier?
I reckon. I reckon.
Thank you, folks, for watching. Tell all your friends so they won't make a mistake and watch it too.
Yeah, tell them how not to get on this
Yeah.
channel.
We won't get nobody hurt.
All right. We'll see you, folks.
Bye-bye.